Yes, Chair, we are now live and we are quorate.
Brilliant. Thank you, Clifford. Welcome everyone to this evening's Cabinet Procurement Committee to give a real, authentic town hall meeting. I think a couple of colleagues still to join us, but we are quorate, so we will start. And if they appear midway through, all the more authentic. But we are quorate, that's the important bit. Right, there are bits I have to read out. I started these streamed meetings. Clifford will keep an eye on me, but I think the main thing I have to say is that this meeting will both be live streamed and it will also be going up, recording will be going up on the council website afterwards. That's Clifford from me. And then you're going to read through the rules of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I know everyone has heard the rules before for protocol, but as it is a live meeting, we do automatically read them for members and for officers and for the public. If I could ask that when speaking, only please speak when invited to do so by the chair. If when participating, please keep your camera on. But if I could ask that your microphones for members and officers are muted through the meeting, unless you are speaking. Please also, if you're referring to any page or any diagram in the document pack, if you could refer to the page number. If we could ask that you speak slowly and clearly as well when addressing questions or responding. If you're having any technical difficulties, please can you use the chat bar in the corner in the right hand side to advise Mario, our IT expert. However, please do not use the chat bar for ordinary chat or asking questions. And if there is any persistent or disruptive behaviour, this will result in the removal from the meeting. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Clifford. You could have fun. You could change those in the middle now just to check if people are still listening, having done them a few times. And I can see Councillor Burke's just joined us. Just to reiterate, Clifford, I've got to write all those of us participating in the meeting as councillors should have our cameras on unless bandwidth doesn't allow that. I know Councillor Burke in particular has got issues with connection.
Yes, if there is an issue with bandwidth, as Councillor Burke has experienced, we would advise to keep the camera off so that it's better reception for you, Councillor Burke. Thank you.
As usual, Clifford, I'm very happy to briefly put my camera on to ensure that this is not, in fact, a doppelganger whilst I'm out enjoying myself instead.
It will be very good to see you for a moment, Councillor Burke.
Only for a moment, though, given the state of my hair.
That's fine, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Selman. If you could just test your microphone and camera for me.
Hi, so my camera has a tendency to crash my laptop at the moment if I put it on.
That's fine, that's really, really fine. We can hear you loud and clear, thank you.
Oh, great, thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, for a moment there, the meeting started to go down a slightly surreal route. We were just saying at the start that we've all got a little overconfident about doing the meetings online and that we would use something to go wrong. So let's see how we go. Right, going through the agenda, we don't have any apologies for absence, and we now have all councillors here. We have no urgent business. Anyone any declarations of interest? Nope.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Caroline.
Not a declaration of interest, but I think it was just to note that Councillor Burke and I are both ward councillors in one of the wards, which I think is impacted by one of the reports. But that's not it's not a conflicting interest, but for the avoidance of doubt, I thought I'd mention that.
We will note that, Councillor. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Notice of intention to conduct business in private. We haven't received any. We have no questions, deputations or petitions. Can we agree the unrestricted minutes of the meeting held on 8th of June? Can I have a chorus of agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Perfect, yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Lovely. And then we come, fantastic. Then we come on to our first substantive item. So item 7, capital works to Hackney Council Housing, and we've got Sinead here to produce the report.
Excellent, thanks, Councillor. So like the last time we did this online, I'll just take 10 minutes to summarise the report, and then I'll take some questions. So this report is, if I can just read the title again for clarity, it's a report seeking the Cabinet Procurement Committee's approval for the procurement of a group of planned capital works to Hackney Council housing which are non-rechargeable to leaseholders and which we plan to let via a pre-existing external framework. So the reasons in the background for this report very much relate to a previous decision which we brought to Cabinet Procurement Committee in May. And that was decision NHQ 66, which sought the extension of our Contract 1 main framework for external works. We were seeking that decision owing to some significant disruption we've had to our long-term procurement plans because of the coronavirus lockdown. And this decision is very much rooted in the same reasons. It's all wrapped up in the need to ensure that we have interim arrangements for capital works from now until the delayed time when we think our new contracts can be in place. And there's a timetable in the report setting out what we think that is going to be, which is in table 1. On my version, it's on page 7. So obviously there's been this delay because both officers are very diverted with the work of, getting all our things in line because of coronavirus. So we've had some operational disruption to our procurement, but also we note that the market is going to be seriously disrupted, and we're still trying to research when is the best time to go out and conduct a long-term procurement exercise. We're hoping next year, early-ish next year. However, in the meantime, we need to ensure that we have capital delivery. Now, in May, we sought the extension of Contract 1, and I mentioned that because you might think, well, why isn't that just enough to have that extension? Obviously, at the time, we were seeking that extension under Regulation 72, which has limitations on it, and the limitations are in duration and also in value. Now, we had some discussion the last time in May about whether the additional value, the additional extended value of Contract 1 would be sufficient. And I did say I didn't think it would entirely be, and we had some notes in the previous report saying that we may need to bring some other routes online of how we can procure capital works. And if we did that, we'd probably need to supplement the extension of Contract 1, and where we had to supplement it, we'd bring it back in the appropriate forum, and that forum is the Cabinet Procurement Committee. So these works, when we came to the last meeting as well, we had done some research to assure ourselves that the works let under Contract 1 remained rechargeable to leaseholders. And with that in mind, we've developed a strategy whereby over the next 2 years, year and a half, we will let rechargeable works on Contract 1 so that we can recover that funding. And where works are not rechargeable to leaseholders, we will let them in an alternate way. And there are all these external frameworks which are already set up. I've given some examples in the paper. South East Consortium is one, LHC is another, Hackney are members of these. They're all just set up in line with EU procurement rules. You draw off via mini tender. The limitation is that we can't recharge to leaseholders. So we have worked through our pipeline of capital projects, and we have developed a list of those which are non-rechargeable to leaseholders and which can be procured via this framework. So those are listed in the recommendation, which is in page 3 of the report. So in total, they value about £40 million. And the list of the projects are, we've got our planned internal works, which is kitchen, bathroom renewals, heating, electrical systems. We've got a specific project mentioned, which is Lincoln Court, which I think is what Councillor Selman was referencing just a moment ago. But also we've got about 2 years on our 7-year programme, which we were planning to deliver. We've got our front entrance door programme. So we have recently started doing front entrance doors to quite a number of properties. And this seeks to issue orders for qualifying non-Section 20 properties in all blocks 6 stories and higher. We think there's about 8 to 10,000 properties. Those numbers are slightly estimated because with fire doors, there's some final work that you need to do around the fire risk assessment, etc., to discuss exactly which door needs to be replaced. But we've estimated the money at the costs at the top end. We've got some Regent's Estate external works. So there's a major planned programme of works going on at the Regent's Estate at the moment, which we would like to complete. However, because the Regent's Estate has a lot of houses and a lot of small blocks, there are a number which are tenanted only, and therefore there's no recharge there. There's another heat recovery unit, replacement works, which is kind of a new mechanical heating system at these estates in Finsbury Park, Oldcrest Mews, etc., which require replacement. And then finally, there's a project which we seek maybe to procure via this route, which is an external wall insulation replacement at Seaton Point. And later in the report, I've clarified that the Seaton Point would only be procured that way if it's non-rechargeable, if we can get finances for leaseholder costs via a building safety fund, which the government have announced but not released, or at the time of publishing this report, they had not yet released the details of how local authorities apply. So we're not yet sure if we can apply for the funding for that scheme. If we can apply for leaseholder funding, we will, and we would seek to procure it in this way, as it would become a non-rechargeable project. So those are the details of the project. I also have to note that there are two in particular, which are the K&Bs at Lincoln Court and the Regent's Estate properties, which were completely priced via contract one with partnering contractors there. Because those projects are priced, because we've done all the surveys and all the pricing, all the planning and everything, we've got planning at Regent's Estate. And because we have done market testing of contract one to assure ourselves that it is in line with market rates, we're also making application in the case of those projects. Regent's Estate, Lincoln Court, and also Seaton Point, we also look for approval to award those via direct award over an external framework. So rather than mini tendering, as we plan in all the other projects, we would look for approval to award Regent's Estate, Lincoln Court and Seaton Point directly to the contractor who has already done all the pre-con development works on those schemes. And so I think really that's the end of the summary that I could offer. There's some further detail in the report about the reasons, and there's some further detail on some of the some of the schemes in table in 5.4.9 on page 11. The schemes are described in a little bit more detail.
Brilliant, thanks Sinead. We don't normally have members of the public serving. Just on the off chance anyone's watching the live stream, would you be all right just to explain about the leaseholder recharge and why that needs, explain a bit more about that, and why that needs to be covered under contract
Yeah,
one?
okay. So under leasehold law, the council, when it enters into contracts, it has to consult with leaseholders in a number of specifically prescribed ways. Now, where there's a framework agreement, and this external framework is a framework, it's called qualifying long-term agreement under these rules. If anyone wanted to look it up, it's called QLTA. And it's required that the council consult with leaseholders prior to entering into a QLTA. So we would, for example, when we're doing our current contracts, we would consult before entering into the QLTA. Before even tendering the QLTA, we would consult when we are about to award the contract. We would consult on the terms of the award, and we would consult again in contract. Because this framework that I'm proposing that we let these works over already exist, we don't have the opportunity to go back in time and consult with leaseholders prior to the establishment of the framework. And it's for that reason that we don't think we can recharge over it, because we've missed the first of a three-stage Section 20 consultation procedure. On contract one, we did those first two stages when contract one was let, and as projects come forward, we would do the third stage, Section 20, which is where the leaseholders get the specific works that we propose at their block. It's very much specific to a block, and they get the specific recharge. So that's the sort of explanation there.
My mic button disappearing right on cue. Clifford, I thought Clifford was looking anxious. He's nudged me to say that Ed's here as a member. I guess I wasn't counting Ed as a member of the public and has probably sat through enough of these meetings to be very familiar with the processes and rules around these. Yes, welcome Ed, and apologies if you got excluded by my comment. Right, I've just seen John touch up the comment. Councillor Burt.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Sinead, obviously I'm aware, because I was fairly close to it as a piece of work, of the amount of effort that has gone into work around thermal efficiency and other sustainable construction methods as part of the asset management strategy. Notwithstanding, I note that the environmental issues section of this particular paper is fairly light, and I suppose what I'm seeking is a reassurance that contractors will be expected to comply with the high standards that we've set within the asset management strategy for the housing service.
So so there's two aspects to environmental issues which they will be required to satisfy under these contracts. The first one, and I'm scrolling, but I'm not going to find it now because this report is very long. The first one relates to operational issues, which is around waste management, which is around the contractor's operations, and they will obviously be required to adhere to the same standards that we ask of all contractors. The second one is the one that's more explicitly referenced in the asset management strategy, as you say, which is around improving the efficiency of our homes, rather than the operational issues with contractors. And on those, there are a number of issues which are embedded into the project. So if I just was to run down through them for your benefit, under planned internal works, under those works, that's where we would fit. If we do the heating system, often our DLO do the boilers, but if we do them at the same time, we always would fit a high efficiency boiler at the same time as planned internal works. The electrical system upgrades don't really bring you any sustainability benefits, because really that's just the sockets. It depends on what people plug in. We also, though, at Lincoln Court in particular, the works there to do the kitchens and bathrooms also include leak fixing. And there's some leaks at the block, and those leaks, first of all, will help, because leaks actually are a really bad source of thermal efficiency within buildings. They cause all sorts of damp to go everywhere and cool the place down. But secondly, you'll note that we'll be able to finish off the very final bit of external wall insulation at the very bottom of the building, so we'll be able to finish off that EWI to make that thermal envelope complete at that block when we get those leaks fixed. On the Regent's estate, we are doing window renewals, which are to high standards of the U values, and also in some of the blocks we will, or like blocks of terrace houses, you know what I mean, we will renew the roofs, and when we renew the roofs, we also bring them up to current U values. And to be honest, windows and roofs within our works, those are the two big inroads that we can make into the efficiency, because we often we can do external wall insulation sometimes, but it's kind of limited. On the front entrance door programme, these will probably have a slightly limited impact. However, we have ensured that it's very clear in the specification all front entrance doors must meet the Partel requirements for the U value, and they also have an FSC timber requirement, because they are all solid timber doors. On the HRU replacement, then there's a minimum efficiency for those mechanical heating systems. They're like an electric heating system. And then finally, at Seaton Point, where we have the external wall insulation replacement, the replacement external wall insulation will be to current Partel standards, rather than whatever they were 20 years ago when that stuff was put on. So there are detailed specification standards built into those. I can send you those by summary if you like.
Excellent, thank you, Sinead, and no less than I expected, a comprehensive
Excellent.
summary.
I'll send you that, sir.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I think so Antoinette indicating, Deputy Mayor Bramble, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick comment. I know in the report, especially in the intro, you had spoken about the impact on COVID on the work, but I just wondered if you could say a bit more about that. I mean, the obvious things about not being able to do the work as and when due to COVID, but I wondered if that had any other issues or challenges that we should need to just be aware of and consider a bit more in detail. And if we're thinking about where we are in terms of the pandemic, please God, no second wave. But if now, well, we won't talk about what the government does and doesn't say clearly, but when we're talking about localised lockdown and what that might mean, I just wondered what the contingency plans were in place going forward and what that might look like. Thank you.
So It's quite a big question. So where we are overall with our capital programme at the moment is that most of our projects have been able to restart, and we've put in place quite a lot of fairly detailed safety precautions, particularly where contractors have to enter somebody's home. However, at the moment, we're only doing works where they might have to enter your home for, say, a day to put in a front entrance door or to put in a window, for example. We have not yet started doing the more detailed or more intrusive works inside people's homes, like kitchens and bathrooms. So we'll seek authority to procure, for example, kitchens, bathrooms this evening. However, I don't see us starting any kitchen and bathroom works until the new calendar year, because I just don't think it will be appropriate to, I mean, it could happen sooner, but at the moment, the way it feels is you'd want to be pretty sure that for 3 weeks, you could go into someone's home and be confident they wouldn't be asked to self-isolate during that time, in which case they'll have to lock out the contractors and be there with half a bathroom, and that's just not something we can really countenance. So we have started externals, even window replacement where it's one-day access. The self-isolation thing doesn't really cause us too much of a problem there, but we think it'll be a while before we start doing the more detailed, the more intrusive works. The contractors have been able to mobilise relatively okay. It's been challenging. Because obviously they've had to work through some fairly difficult things, and I think as the weeks go on, it's becoming clearer. So I think last May I had no real idea, but now we have most of our sites up and running again, and I can actually say, for example, we have full bookings for our window installs at the moment. So residents are not saying no to works in their homes. In the longer term, though, the impacts do remain a little bit unclear. What we're doing is we reforecast in detail every quarter where we are with our spend, where we are with our programs, and what that means for the delivery that we can achieve, and particularly the types of projects that we can achieve. But we are still, I mean, whereas in May I might have been saying I was working week to week, I'm now probably working month to month, really, in terms of projections. We're trying to take note where we can of industry knowledge around when we can procure again, because obviously the market, we don't want to procure when the market is quite unstable. And in terms of the construction industry as a whole, we think it will take the end of the summer, because the furlough scheme at the moment helps contractors. We have some concerns about what might happen, for example, when the furlough scheme ends in October, if indeed it does. Do you know what I mean? And so we just have to keep a watching brief. For now, we are trying to ensure that the projects that we can issue meet a kind of a minimum level of capital delivery that we need to achieve, and I think it will remain slower than we would have hoped until April, just because even if we get schemes out, the guys on site, or the people on site, have to social distance. It's slower, etc. So we're making, this is the amount of work that we could see in the pipeline that was not rechargeable that we can procure this way, and at least having these provisions in place. So we have the extension to contract 1. If we have this also, we have a whole pile of at least procurement routes we can utilise. And then we can decide based on the conditions, based on safety requirements, what are the best ones to use at particular times. But it's very much something that we need to keep quite a watching eye on, I'm afraid.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to take silence as no. Oh, no, was that you coming on, Caroline?
No further questions, but just to, again, I guess, thank Sinead for the comprehensive pre-briefings as well for ward councillors, which was really appreciated and really helpful. Thanks.
That's all right. You're welcome.
Brilliant. In which case, can we agree the recommendations as set out? Last time I did a slightly clunky register approach to make sure we had a yes from everyone. Cliff, do you want me to do that again, or just is it always yes is okay?
I think a yes is okay, Chair.
Okay, can we have a chorus of agrees for the report, please?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Happy, Clifford?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sinead. As always, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the call, but also welcome to go.
Okay, I might leave you to it, so see you then.
Bye. Brilliant. Next up, we have got item 8, which is an information item. Renewal of gas and electricity supply contracts, and we should have, and I see, camera's just gone on, Mary here to introduce the paper. Oh, and before you start, Mary, Clifford always gets anxious if I don't flag there's an exempt appendix, and we have to wait to the exempt part of the meeting to discuss that if members want to. Apologies, over to you, Mary.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, as you mentioned, this report is an information report. The report covers the council's energy procurement activity for the current financial year, and it cuts across both gas and electricity across housing, estates, street lighting, the corporate estates, and the schools. All of these contracts were procured through the CCS framework, and in this financial year, we've been able to achieve close to a 13% decrease against last year's prices. And this is inclusive of both the transmission costs as well. And we believe the decrease is really based on the periods that CCS have bought, which is typically between October of 2019 and March of 2020. So the market has been quite up and down, so to speak. COVID itself has had an impact, but we don't know exactly what the actual impact is going to be until next year. But as for this financial year, our current status is that we've been able to achieve that decrease in prices. And that also includes 100% REGO for electricity, which has a small price uplift on the electricity cost as well. But that cost is inclusive of the reduction that we've been able to achieve. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes. So like I said, the contract is inclusive of 100% REGOs. Going forward, what we will be doing is looking to procure electricity through power purchase agreements. We've already started work to look at how the council will be able to procure through power purchase agreements, because this would give us greater transparency on our electricity cost and as well as our carbon reduction credentials. The PP agreements themselves will be potentially longer term contracts where we'll be looking to either have a corporate PPA with a generating facility, or we will be looking to actually own a generating facility. Like I said, this would have to be longer term contracts, but we've already started putting the wheels in motion to identify the consultations that we need, both with residents and also some of the market testing information that we would need to acquire to be able to come back, obviously, to CPC to make a recommendation on the way forward. And that's what we've been able to achieve on the electricity side. On the gas side, we're still procuring as per normal. If we do go with PPAs on the electricity, we potentially will continue to buy our gas through CCS through our energy providers. Gas itself, potentially there are green gas credentials that are in the market at the moment, but a lot of this at the moment is quite scarce. So there isn't a lot of demand, a lot of supply to go around, and the costs are quite high as it is at the moment. So we're continuing to keep our eye on it, because as part of the council's climate change declaration and our route to zero carbon, we recognize that we want to reduce our consumption, but we also want to buy better, so to speak. But potentially our route to reducing our gas consumption will be through decarbonization of our estates, as most of our gas consumption is really for heat. And so as we continue to decarbonize our estates, we will then be reducing our gas consumption as well. Now, the decarbonization route has been identified as one of our strategies in the energy strategy, which we're developing at the moment and should be ready by the autumn. As well as ISO 50001 as well is another strategy that we've identified, and we've started to put actions into motion for a lot of the works that we want to start to do. So these are some of the routes that we've continued to take to meet a reduction in our energy consumption. We've also continued to increase our credentials through the generation of of solar panels for electricity consumption. Across our corporate estates, we do have solar panels, and we're at the moment trialing PPA agreements for solar generation on a couple of our leisure centres as well. And that should be completed hopefully before the end of this year as well. So that's really where we are on the energy procurement side of things. I'm happy to take any questions.
Brilliant, thank you. A really interesting report, and quite exciting to hear about the future direction of travel and what's coming down the line. John, I already made a note. I assumed you would want to come in anyhow, so I was going to call you. So, Councillor Burke.
Well, I must say, Chair, it's extremely disappointing at times like this to have officers who are so deeply engaged with our agenda on decarbonisation, because it leaves me with very little left to say other than to thank Rotimi and Mary and the rest of the team for their work on this. And we shouldn't underplay what a remarkable achievement this is for the local authority in the space of 2 years. When you consider that grid electricity is more carbon intensive than gas, we have eliminated our carbon emissions from 100% of the corporate electricity that we use. And as a result of that, though that represents 75% of our energy consumption, it actually represents in excess of 80% of the carbon intensity of our energy. So in just over 2 years, Rotimi and Mary and the team have, working with the administration, managed to decarbonise our consumption by in the region of 80%, which is a remarkable achievement. But we are not by any means resting on our laurels, and as Mary's noted, our next steps will be to pursue, where possible, power purchase agreements so that the people of Hackney will be able to know the specific sites from which their electricity comes from, and to explore options around the further decarbonisation of gas. And though products for green gas are limited in the marketplace at the moment, our work, as Mary notes, around energy efficiency management frameworks mean that the best way in which we can decarbonise our gas consumption into the future is to eliminate it wherever possible through efficiency measures, because the best and most decarbonised form of energy is the energy that you don't use. So once again, finally, I'd just like to thank the officers for their fantastic efforts so far and their ongoing efforts in this area, and hopefully we'll be able to return to you in a year's time with more good news again. Thank you.
That is the highest praise, Mary, that Councillor Burke, Mary and Rotimi, that Councillor Burke has ever shared for a report that's come to Cabinet Procurement Committee, which is probably worth noting, Clifford, in fact.
Yeah, we graciously accept that.
I feel like John, although John, I do note that it is your own report, so there would have been an issue there if you weren't totally happy with it.
I'd have just said as set out.
I feel like John has very much laid down the challenge now, but does anyone have any questions or points they want to come in on? I'm going to take silence as not. So this is just one for us to know, isn't it, Clifford? So can we all note the report? Noted?
Noted.
Yeah, that's a suitable chorus of noted. Brilliant. Mary, you're welcome to stay for the final 30 seconds so of the meeting, or head off if you'd like. Thank you very much.
No, 30 seconds, fine, I'm here.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, hang on, I've gone wrong. I've lost my briefing note. Where are we up to? Right, we've got any other unrestricted business. We don't have any. We've got to note the dates of future meetings. Technically, we have to exclude the press and public, but we're not going to discuss the exempt items. So we just have to agree the exempt minutes of the previous CPC. Can we agree those? Agreed?
Agreed.
Perfect. The exempt appendix, which is noted. We have no other items of exempt business, and that, unless Clifford indicates otherwise, brings us to a close.
Meeting's closed, Chair. Thank you. No